All right, folks, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Tony Martinez, and we're going to go fast and furious through some stats and some opportunities when it comes to pre-foreclosures and short sales. I know a lot of you on the call, but there may be always at least one person that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, or you guys have never heard me tell my story. But I am one of you. I am a Florida licensed broker associate in the great state of Florida. Although with the heat we're having right now, I don't know how great it is. This is just insane the way this summer's been. But I'm also an enterprise team co-leader along with my wife, Gabi. Now, Real Trends now has a new category. If you have more than 50 agents on your team, it's no longer a mega team. It is an enterprise team. And we have about 110 agents on our team. So I know the struggles. I know what they're going through. I know all of that good stuff that's going on out there. I am the owner of the CDPE and its lead instructor, certified distressed property expert. I also now own the military residential certification and it's a lead instructor. So I have a passion for serving folks that are going through a difficult time and losing their home in foreclosure. And I have a passion to serve those that have served our country. So those are the two courses that I am currently teaching. Now, over the years, collectively, I have taught at least 25,000 people. It's probably a lot more than that, but I just figured, I'm too lazy to change the slide. So what are my goals? I mean, my goal is to spend no more than 60 minutes with you, maybe less, because people's attention span and everything else. So what can I hope to achieve in this shorter period of time? Well, maybe introduce you to something you're not aware of, or maybe reintroduce you, because I often see people that are already part of our CDP community come back on these calls. And I think the reason why they're doing it is they need a B12 shot. They need just a reminder of maybe what they're missing out on by not engaging distressed homeowners. I want to try to get you as motivated as possible to get out there and help people. It's not enough for me just to share this information and say, okay, guys, say, good luck. I'm really trying to build on a movement that I restarted 5 years ago. I'm trying to get agents to get out there and assertively and aggressively promote them, the services and approach as many homeowners as possible. But I want you to do it the right way. So it's imperative that I impress upon you the importance of proper education. One of the things I'm very, very concerned about, and I've always had this concern, but I think just recently it's becoming more top of mind, is that when you're dealing with the topic of short sales, and I'm going to explain the difference between a pre-foreclosure and a short sale in a little bit, but in particular, short sales, there are way too many agents in our business that are taking short sale listings that have no clue what they're doing. Absolutely no clue what they're doing. And what they're doing is putting themselves, not just themselves, but they're putting their brokerages at risk for litigation. And I do everything I can to reach out to broker owners and team leaders and say, are you monitoring what your people are doing? Because this can come back at you in a major way. And so I feel that the class that I teach, the designation that I teach, is bar none the best in the business. Now, you can say, Tony, of course you're going to feel that way because you're biased. But you know what? I got quite a few hundred, if not thousands, of people that would agree with me. So what I do is I pour out as much knowledge as I can with you, at no charge to you, for 45 minutes or so. And then I say, you know what? I think in exchange for this, give me 5 minutes, give me 7 minutes to share with you how you can become a CDPE, how you can take my course, and how you can engage in this arena the proper way. Now, I've been using this slide now for 3 years. I was hoping that I could stop using it after a while. Not even close. We started this year with great expectations. And I don't know if you're like me and you're looking at the fact that August is almost over and you're going, what happened to the year? Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. But I remember as we were going into the new year, we all felt that this is the year that it's going to turn around. Interest rates are going to come down. People are going to get back into the market and all is going to be well. We're not even remotely close. Based on the latest data that's come out, we're in for another terrible real estate year. Now, as you say that, there's always someone that poses, well, I'm having a great year. Good. It happens. But it's all relative too. If you sold one sale last year and you sold two sales this year, wow, you doubled your sales, but you only sold two sales. So it all comes down to everyone's individual definition of success. It all comes down to what you deem to be what you need to feel fulfilled and to feed your family. But there is no doubt that the struggle is real for real estate agents. And you know what? Now the struggle is being felt by individuals that cannot afford to make their mortgage payments. Now, people have a tendency to complain. You know, have you ever noticed if you post something, I don't know, if you post an accomplishment of yours on Facebook, you might get, 4 or 5 likes. And if you post, oh man, this terrible thing just happened to me, all of a sudden you get 100 likes. It's almost like misery loves company. But I don't fall into that. I look at it as the more chaos there's out there, the more opportunity there is for people that want to seize that opportunity. A market like the one we're having now creates opportunities for those that decide to not run with the pack. You know what I'm saying? But let's get back to basics, right? We from real estate school were taught that being a listing agent is the name of the game, right? You list to last. And then what happens is markets will ebb and flow, and sometimes we go from a seller's market to a buyer's market. My area of South Florida, we're seeing a definite shift toward a buyer's market. And what that can usually mean for agents is to say, well, I got to go ahead and shift my attention now to only focusing on buyers. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think you need to be well balanced and well rounded. But I am always going to die on this hill and say being a listing agent is more important now than ever before. I can give you several reasons why. You work with a buyer, you don't get to double end the deal typically, right? When you work with the listing, you can sell both sides. When you work with the listing, you can sell both sides and you can help that seller buy someplace else or relocate someplace else and get a referral. You know where I'm going with that. And now with all the issues surrounding compensation, who is not remotely concerned about getting paid? Well, people that are on the listing side, they know how much they're going to get paid. So we can go on and on. So here's my challenge, right? My challenge is that the wrong things are being taught. And I'm not slamming any particular train or anything else, but when you are being told to go out there and keep doing the things that are not working, I just think that maybe there's a better approach. So for example, if you're out there right now knocking on doors, God bless you. And if you're knocking on doors right now telling people, hey, listen, you thought about selling, what you're basically saying is, hey, I know you have a 2.5% interest rate, but wouldn't it be great for you to sell now, buy now, and pay 6.5%? I mean, that's what they're hearing in many cases, right? So should you stop doing that? Absolutely not, because I do believe that people have to get off the fence eventually and are going to have no choice but to list and get on with their lives. But that may not happen for several months. It could be even longer. So here's what I've adopted, right? It's not our job to motivate someone to sell right now. I think it's better for us to identify someone that is motivated to sell. That means they have no choice but to sell. And that's where my niche comes in. I have become a huge proponent of specialization. At any point in time, we have 1.2 million realtors in real estate, right? Is it more than that? Is it less than that? I don't know. I don't care. But I can tell you this, I think the world could get by with fewer realtors. I think that what we have is way too many general practitioners. We have individuals that are trying to be all things to all people. And I'm coming in saying, you know what? Why don't we try specialization? Because specialists tend to earn more. And you see this happening in many different industries, medical for one thing, right? You go to your general practitioner, they make far less than their specialist does. And within our real estate industry, I see the same thing. So I have two particular niches to share with you today. One, working with active military and veterans. That's my other course. That's not the one we're talking about now. But if you're interested in finding out more about that, we absolutely are willing to share that information with you. Probate is another great niche. Divorce is another great niche. But let's talk about pre-foreclosures. I believe that they're the low-hanging fruit. If listings grew on trees, most agents show up to that listing presentation without a ladder. And then more experienced agents show up with a very long ladder. And then the top producer, because you know what, these sellers are typically interviewing 2 or 3 agents, they tend to back up a cherry picker and they just snap up that listing. And so agents are scrambling to try to climb that tree, and yet all this fruit is hanging around at the bottom or right there on the floor for you to pick up. So it's beyond me how many real estate agents are just ignoring this niche. And I think it has to do with leadership. A lot of it has to do with leadership. I think there's folks out there that just don't get it. Like, for example, I see that there's a training room here with KW in Oviedo. I mean, that's leadership that gets it. Or this would not be being shown in their training room. I had the pleasure of teaching a class in April of this year in Orlando for over 100 Keller Williams agents. Those were leaders that got it because they encouraged their agents to get. See, I'm very broker agnostic. I want to teach this course to everyone, but I do run into pushback. I run into pushback from associations of realtors. I run pushbacks from CEOs, from team leaders that really don't get it, and as to how great an opportunity this could be for their agents. And then what happens is that just gets translated into no training and no support for someone that's really wanting to engage in short sales. So if this is something that you already think you want to do, or by the time I'm done with you all, you're thinking, hey, man, this is the way to go. You have no shortage of short sale classes that are out there, because look what's been happening. More and more have been springing up. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I want you to jot these stats down. I had to go up to a different source. Normally, I go to adamdata.com, ATTOM data.com. But for some reason, they haven't really posted the July numbers yet. And that's kind of weird because they usually have it out by then. So I had to scramble. But here's what I found. And I found that lenders started a foreclosure process last month on 40,000 properties, which was down slightly from the month before, but up almost 23% from the year before. So what's been happening is for almost, I think, 13, 14, 15, 16 months now, the foreclosures have been increasing. Now, so you're thinking foreclosures are back. No, they're not. They never left. We're just seeing more of them now. I see people all the time saying, Tony, well, short sales are back. And I go, no, they're not. They never left. It just wasn't front page news. But now we're seeing a lot of different dynamics play out that is forcing these foreclosure numbers up there. So let me share some of these, because some of these some of these you may not have been paying attention to. And the reason why I share this is because I'm not a doom and gloom person. I'm not predicting the end of the world or another 2008. But I am telling you, we have not seen the worst of the number of foreclosures that we're going to be having. And here's what's going to contribute to it. Consumer debt is insane. In particular, credit card debt. I think it's now $1.3 trillion. And look what's been happening. Consumer credit card delinquencies are at an all-time high. And a lot of these folks are paying 20, 25, maybe upwards of 30% interest. And because what happens is when the COVID money ran out, people didn't want to go back to the lifestyle they used to have. So when you see these restaurants full, when you see these theme parks full and the cruises full, it's not because all people have this ready cash. It's because people are charging it, and then they hopefully deal with it later. Well, we're already seeing that the bottom is falling out on that. Another area, for example, is car loan delinquencies. And car repossessions are also at an all-time high. Unemployment. Now, this can vary from area to area. I get it, folks. Your area may not have an issue. And it's also very localized. If I'm in Florida, do I really care what's going on in California? you got to pay attention to what's going on into the market, going on with the markets that you serve. But you have to understand there's so much competition for our attention right now, right? If it's not what's going on with the war, what's going on with maybe a celebrity passing away, whatever it is, there's just this 24/7 cycles coming in. You don't necessarily hear about the number of layoffs and terminations that are happening unless you're choosing to look into it more. But these are going up. I mean, there's a pretty good chance that you already know someone that's either been laid off or terminated. So you're going to see that going up. Payment increases. Well, why are they increasing? I thought that adjustable rate mortgages went away. They didn't. They became far less popular than they were in 2006 and 7, but they never went away. In fact, they made a bit of a resurgence. And so what happens when those reset, right? But even when you have a fixed rate mortgage, look what's not fixed: your association, your property taxes, and your insurance, right? So all of these things are taking people's payments to levels that they can no longer afford. Now, I talked about ARMs resetting, but what about buy down mortgages? See, this is something a lot of folks don't pay attention. I was at a recent a training session. There was a gentleman there from a different state. He's a title company. And he said, yeah, the last 6 foreclosures files that we got are all as a result of buy down mortgages resetting. So here's what I want you to think about. You think that nothing should go wrong, that because when the lender qualifies someone to for a buy down mortgage, that means that for a year or 2 or 3, the mortgage is going to be lower and then it goes up again. It's very similar to an adjustable rate mortgage. They're qualifying them on the end result, the end number, so they shouldn't have a problem. Well, human nature gets in the way. People spend money that they don't have. And so, here I am as a team leader. Do I want my agents to know how to properly present a buy down option as a way of helping people to qualify and get into a home? Absolutely. But I also want them to be responsible and say, folks, please factor in what your payment is going to be a year or 2 or 3 from now, because I don't want to represent you in the purchase of this home only a year or 2 later to maybe represent you in having to sell it because you can't afford to stay there. And the down payment assistance programs are a disaster. We applaud the fact that we're trying to get as many people to afford a home as possible, but guess what? A lot of them are really not qualified. And it doesn't take very long for them to fall behind on their payments and foreclosures right around the corner. And if you're wondering, how can such an equity-rich nation, which I could argue that we're not as equity-rich as we have been told, because Americans have been using the equity in their home as an ATM card. They've been tapping that equity for a while now. But here's the point is you could have $300,000 in equity in your house right now, lose your job tomorrow, and not be able to make the next mortgage payment. And you're thinking, how is that possible? Well, write this down. 62 to 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's scary. How about the fact that about 33% of Americans that earn over $150,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck? When surveyed, hey, Americans, how many of you have $1,000 cash in a savings account for an emergency? Only about 40 to 43% have that. How many Americans cannot even make it from paycheck to paycheck? They have to go to these paycheck advance places that are just tearing them up on the interest rate. So here's the bottom line. When people don't have money in the bank, and look, I have 2 agents in my team that both work for Spirit. All right. So one day they were employed, the next day at 2 a.m., boom, don't even show up for work. We're closed. If you are not employed, you can't tap the equity in your home. But here's something I want you to write down that I think is very, very different from what I experienced all the way back in 2008, 9, and 10. And that is way back then when for every 10 homes in foreclosure, I would say 7 were underwater. That means they owed more than they could sell the home for, which meant the only way that they could sell the home was through a short sale. You know what I'm finding now? I don't know for how much longer, but more of them have equity than they're underwater. So think about this for a second. You have $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in equity, and you fall behind on your payments. You cannot make the payments. You can't go borrow against your house. And your solution, your plan is to let the bank take your house? That's just insane. That's insane. Why aren't they listing with one of us to get their home sold and walk away with as much cash as possible? Because they don't know. They don't know. They're freaked out. They're emotionally distraught. So when I say pre-foreclosure, I'm talking about the time period from the time that they fall behind on their mortgage to the time that they lose the lose the home at an auction or sale. We have that time period to help these folks avoid foreclosure, hopefully by helping them stay, but let's face it, most can't. So let's help them to exit with dignity. So think about this for a second. If somebody's behind on their payments, facing foreclosure, and has equity, and you get to them in time, you can help them list that property, get it sold. They can walk away with money at the closing table, and it's not a short sale, so you don't have to go through any of the processes that involve that a short sale entails. Think about that for a second. And that's where we come in. If you know what to do, you're in a better place. When I teach my class, it's not how other people teach. I teach you what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. Because think about it, you're dealing with human beings. You have to know how to approach them, what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And then what I try to encourage everyone to do is to go out there and talk to as many people as possible. You know, there's so many companies springing up right now with short sale training. It's a joke. And I don't know what their backgrounds are. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But what a coinkydink that all of a sudden I'm seeing all these other courses and certifications springing up. Well, guess who was there from the beginning? We were. Okay, because our history goes back all the way to 2008. When I was teaching the CDP, before I ever owned it, I coined this phrase: you can make a living or you can make a difference. As CDPs, we get to do both. So we started in 2008 right here in Boca Raton. I joined them in 2009. I joined them late 2008, never with the intention of teaching the class, but I asked to teach a class. And I did my first one January 2009. Now, how did it work out? Well, I guess I did okay. I became their lead trainer and their trainer of trainers. And I went on to teach at least 15,000 or more CDPs. See, when this designation was at its height, we had almost 50,000 members across the country. Just about all of the major franchises, all of the major companies, the banks, the trainers, the speakers, they were all behind us. But you know what? Sometimes things come to an end, and the CDP actually ceased to be in 2020. I had stopped teaching for them years before that to open up my own brokerages. So what else happened in 2020? COVID. I saw the writing on the wall. I said, you know what? Who knows how long this is going to last? How many people are going to start losing their homes to foreclosure? How many people might be underwater? Let me go ahead and dust off my training. And what I ended up doing was buying the CDPE because I found out that they had stopped offering it. They moved on to other things. So it was only natural that I buy it, given that I was the guy that had taught the most CDPs out there, right? And so we bought it in May of 2021, brought it back in June of 2021. And ever since then, I've been fighting an uphill battle, trying to convince people that this is not necessarily the market, but it is a niche that is worth exploring. What do we stand for? Helping them stay. Believe it or not, I teach, do everything you can to help them stay in the home. Now, here's the problem with that. Most of them take way too long to take action. So by the time we reach out to them or they reach out to one of us, it's way too late to help them stay in their home. So plan B is to help them exit with dignity. Write down those 3 words because that's a big part of how I encourage CDPs to market themselves. All right, to exit with dignity, because that's just the reality. If you're being shown to the curb by the sheriff, there's no dignity in that whatsoever. Now, when I teach, and I teach it online on demand, I teach it live and in person, I teach it live virtual. There's a ton of different modules that I go through. And I start from A and build it up. People say, well, Tony, I already knew that part. I go, listen, I don't know what you know. I know that there's different agents from different skill levels that take my class. So I teach from A to Z, but I don't start at H. I start at A. And one of the things I really try to get across is for agents to understand what foreclosure is and what foreclosure is not. So I have a module called Foreclosure Demystified. Now, one of the best ways I have found to get you motivated to invest in my course is to give you a snippet of what it is I cover in the course. So if you say, wow, man, that's pretty good, and you're telling me there's more, then you'll more than likely be in a position where you say, tell me more about how I can take the entire course and earn your designation. So let's start with this. Write all this stuff down. This is my gift to you. Foreclosure is a process, not a single event. And what happens is every state goes about it a different way. When people ask me, Tony, are you going to teach me the California approach to short sales? I say, no, I'm sorry, I will not be. And they go, why not? I go, because there is no California approach to short sales. Short sales are done the same in all 50 states. What is different is how each state goes about foreclosing. So foreclosure is state specific. Here's something else you need to know. And if you don't know, go out there and just Google it, get on chat, whatever. Find out if your state is either judicial, non-judicial, or both. What does that mean? Well, when it's judicial, that means that all foreclosures must go through the court system. Like Florida, 100% judicial, New York, New Jersey. So what does that mean? It takes longer. It's more borrower friendly. It's less friendly to the plaintiffs. Now, there are states that are non-judicial, which are faster. That means that they don't have to go through the court system. They can just sue the person for the foreclosure. Or there are states that have both available, and there's one that tends to be more popular than the other. Why is this important? It's going to tell you how much time you typically have to help them avoid foreclosure before they lose the home. Now, I focus my training on helping people with mortgage default, mortgage foreclosure, but people can be foreclosed on because of being delinquent on their HOA dues. And Florida, for example, we have very, very predatory HOAs. We have HOAs that as soon as they can go after that house or that condo, they do. And then there's also the property tax angle. But the vast majority of foreclosures are mortgage default related. Now, timelines will vary from state to state, but there is a process that they all must adhere to. So let's start with default. This default occurs typically on day 31. You've exceeded that grace period. Your mortgage was due on the 1st. Hey, it's now the 31st. You're technically in default. Are you in foreclosure? No. In fact, federal law now dictates that servicers cannot initiate foreclosure activity against a borrower until they're at least 120 days in default. So that's newer. At the beginning of the foreclosure crisis of 2008, that wasn't there. And some states were really, really fast to foreclose. So now technically they have 4 months before the lender can initiate foreclosure activity. Do they do it at 4 months in one day? Not necessarily, because write this down. Banks, for the most part, they don't want the house. The servicers don't want to foreclose. They just want to get paid. They foreclose when there's no other option available to them. And then here's what varies from state to state. Are they required to send them some type of notice of default before the actual legal process starts? And again, that can vary from state to state. But once someone is officially in the foreclosure process, in Florida, it's called less pendants. In some areas, it's called complaint or petition. It is now public record. Well, they're behind on their payments and not yet in foreclosure, it really shouldn't be anybody else's business. But once they are formally in foreclosure, it becomes public record. And then what you have to keep an eye out for, and this is the biggest challenge we have, is when will they ultimately lose the home? And how do they ultimately lose the home? Well, the bank, the court will auction it off. There is a sale or auction date. Some places still do it old school on the courthouse steps. Others is only online. You have to become familiar with how your county, not your state, your county handles that. And then what you're trying to do is help them do something. In other words, help them to sell that property either as a regular sale with urgency or as a short sale before this date hits. In many cases, it's not bought by a third party, it's taken back by the bank. When it's taken back from the bank, then that becomes eventually what is called an REO property, real estate owned. People will ask me, will you teach me REOs? I go, absolutely not. Well, why not? Because I do not believe that that is where the best opportunities are. So these banks, these servicers already have their REO agents in place, and they have a long list of people trying to get in there. All right. And anybody that's trying to become an REO agent has probably never been an REO agent before, because the ones that have will tell you that ain't no fun. See, you are hoping and praying that you get an opportunity to work an REO file, and you're having to jump through all these hoops. And the way I look at it is, I'd rather be belly to belly, face to face with the owner of the property, because the owner of the property can decide whom that they list with. So those 40,000 properties that just went into foreclosure last month, those are 40,000 potential listings where if we as real estate professionals were to engage them aggressively, we can get face to face with the owners, and the owner decides who they link with, list with, not the bank. Now, something else to know is, does your state offer a redemption period, which means after the sale, the person has the right to stay in that property a little bit longer. Most states do not. Another critical part of my training is to prepare you for, I don't know, how would I should say this? You have to state the facts, right? If someone is in a place in their mind right now where they're like, oh, well, listen, I think I got all the time in the world, I'm not worried and everything. You have to be able to say, well, listen, okay, but are you aware of all of the negative consequences that can fall on your head should you let the bank take your house? And the way I like to say it is, it's kind of like having arrows in your quiver, right? If I can teach this to you and you remember these, right? And you can recall these when you need it, you're now going hunting for listings with more than just one arrow in your quiver. So here's some quick tips, right? For example, talk about how detrimental a foreclosure can be to their credit rating, because a foreclosure will stay on a credit report for up to 7 years, and bankruptcy will stay for up to 10 years. So that's hardcore. That can hurt them. In fact, it can make them ineligible for a traditional loan for 5 to 7 years. But if you can help them with a short sale, as an example, they could be into a home again. They could be homeowners again in as little as 2 to 3 years. Now, think about that for a second, right? I kind of look at this as a carrot or the stick. Hey, man, you don't want to lose your home to foreclosure. Why not? Because you're going to have it's going to be public record for 7 years. You don't want that. I could care less. I'll buy everything cash. Oh, really? So then I says, well, let me dangle something in front of them instead. Well, listen, let me ask you this. You think you ever want to be a homeowner again in the future? Most often they're going to say, yeah, why wouldn't I be? Exactly. So let me ask you this. Would you rather live with the restriction and not being able to qualify for a traditional mortgage for 5 to 7 years? Or let me help you with a short sale and you might be back into a home in as little as 2 to 3 years. You see what I did there? I went ahead and rephrased it in a way that they go, oh, wow, okay. No one really shared that with me before. That kind of makes sense. Tell me more, right? Now, employment issues. Maybe they're in trouble because they lost their job. Maybe they got in trouble because of other reasons. But here's what it can happen. Many employers will either not hire somebody with a foreclosure or fire someone that has a foreclosure on their record. So they need to keep this in mind because it may not affect them right away, but it could impact their ability to get the job they always wanted or needed down the road. What if they have a security clearance? Like, for example, if you're dealing with somebody in the military, if you're dealing with, say, an airline pilot, someone in a TSA, maybe they're still employed. Do they really need to lose their job as a result of this? And they say, well, why would I lose my job? I go, well, you have a security clearance, don't you? Yeah. I go, have you spoken to your commanding officer or your superior? Have you spoken to HR to see what impact having a foreclosure might have on your security clearance? And a lot of them are like, I had no clue it could happen. I go, yeah, it's not unusual for someone to lose their security clearance because they've had a foreclosure. But it's also rare that they lose it because of a short sale. See what I did there? I'm not getting upset. I'm not getting in their face. I'm not getting defensive. I'm armed with the quivers that I need to go ahead and say, well, look, maybe you ought to take a different approach, right? Find out if your state is a deficiency judgment state, because Florida is. When a state is a deficiency judgment state, they can actually go after the person to recover any money that's lost. So let's break this down. If someone is losing their home and they have equity and you help them sell it and they walk away with money, there is no loss to the bank. The bank was made whole. But you have to understand that if they are underwater and they lose it in a foreclosure, the bank can come after them for what the bank lost. Think about that for a second. They probably haven't even thought about something like this. Can it happen in a short sale? Yes. But here's the biggest difference. In a short sale, we're putting forth all of the documentation to show the bank or banks that these people are insolvent. They're broke. They don't have the money. And in many, almost all, not all, almost all short sales, the negotiator is successful at getting the bank to waive the right to go after them, to pursue a deficiency judgment. You see how huge that is? In a foreclosure, there's no advocate, right? But in a short sale, we're advocating, look, take a look at this person's situation and work with them. Now, we have a section that talks about what ways can be implemented maybe to keep them in their home, but ultimately, they're probably going to need to list and sell the property, right? So if they have equity, fantastic. This becomes a regular sale with urgency. Now, a short sale. What is a short sale? A lot of agents really don't even understand. So here's the way I break it down, right? You don't even bring up a short sale. A short sale doesn't even enter into the discussion unless you cannot sell it for enough to cover the liens and any other expenses associated with the sale. We like to say they're underwater on that property. So I'm trying to save you some grief here. Don't sit down with a distressed homeowner and say, well, let's talk about a short sale. First, find out what they owe, find out what you could sell it for, and that determines whether a short sale enters into the conversation, right? Now, when there is a short sale, it's not easy. It involves several different steps. Here's what we're ultimately doing. We're asking the bank or banks to lose a significant amount of money. That's not an easy task. So there's a process that has to be followed. If we're successful, the bank or banks will agree to the sale, release the liens, and allow the title to be transferred to a new buyer. That is clear and marketable title. Now, it should not be abused. It was back in 2008, 9, and 10. It was used as a get me out of my mortgage card. Hey, listen, I can make the payments, but I'm not happy that my property is worth less than I paid for it or owe on it. No, no. Banks are smarter now than they were in 2008. It is for those that meet the qualifications. When somebody can make the payments and chooses not to, that is strategic default. And what are the qualifications? There's three of them. I cover all of it in the course. But one, the biggest one is there must be some kind of hardship. Something had to go wrong that now prevents them from being able to make those payments going forward. Okay? Now, what I do, and I'll pause at the very end for any questions you have. If I'm teaching a class live and in person, it's an all-day class, 9 to 5 usually. If I'm teaching it online on demand, this is one of the last modules that we cover. If I'm teaching it over Zoom, I do it over 2 days so that you can not have your head explode from all the information. But of course, I go into a lot of different ways that you can build your pipeline of business. I'll give away a couple now. Okay. And the rest is covered in the course. I think there's huge opportunities in short-term rentals, Airbnbs, because what happened is during COVID, a lot of people went crazy with these very, very aggressive loans, DSCR loans, and they bought 1, 2, 3, 4 properties and they were making bank because this was the biggest thing and they were renting these out. But you know what's happened? A lot of things have happened. A lot of cities and states and associations have said no mas. And many of these folks, the markets are oversaturated. There's so many Airbnb properties available, short-term rentals, and we're seeing some people actually go back to hotels because they're sick and tired of these hosts that are just a way too domineering. You must clean this, you must leave that, you must this, all this kind of stuff, right? So what happens is, a lot of people are finding that they cannot rent those short-term rentals like they used to. And they can't rent it long-term because the payments they have to make are much higher. Those are a huge opportunity for you. The other thing is to do similar to what I'm doing now, put on foreclosure prevention webinars. These are fantastic for getting the word out to everyone in your state. Daniel in Hawaii is super successful at doing them. And he even encourages people when asked, how do you do it? Use Tony's presentation. And what he's referring to is what I do for my CDPEs. What I've done is, since I do these for my team members all the time anyway, I record myself doing this and I share the recording with CDPE so CDPEs can play it over and over and over so that they can learn what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And then I go as far as actually sharing the PowerPoint with you guys so that you guys can go ahead and practice and practice and practice. Anyway, if I've given you some reasons to think about getting involved, taking your business to another level by helping distressed homeowners, then the next step is the right training. And as I said before, we are the gold standard. Okay. Everything you see listed here is what I cover in the course. It's very detailed, very intensive. It's been described as taking a sip of water from a fire hose. All right. So there's no doubt whatsoever you're going to be blown away. I'll give you an example. I actually teach you how to do the entire short sale listing presentation from start to finish. Now, once you take the course, now you also enjoy for 1 year being a member of our CDPE movement. So you get your certificate, which you should probably share on social media. And most importantly, you gain exclusive access to our resources, like our forms, like our disclosures, like our scripts, like our marketing tools. And for an entire year, you have access to this. And if you like what you see, if you're engaged, guess what? To renew and stay current is only $99 per year, a ridiculous amount. We have our own private Facebook group that's plus over 1,000 members now, where CDPs are helping each other out. They don't have a financial interest necessarily. They're just helping each other out. We just upgraded our Find Our CDPE map. It used to be internal. It used to be only for a CDP to find another CDP, but now we've opened it up to the public. Now consumers can go on CDPE.com and find a CDPE in their area. So if you're an active member, you not only get to submit your information, we've actually enhanced it so you can include your photo and a link to your web page or website. This is all part of the membership. You can take it online. I'm sorry, live and in person. Now, this is the old one here. I do have a class coming up in Orlando area. So if you are in the center of the state, if you're willing to come down to Orlando area, maybe you attend the class and you stay for the attractions. That's coming up on September 14th. It's being hosted by the Orlando Regional Association of Realtors. All right. So go on their page because they did an amazing deal for people there. So I can't get into that right now, but you owe it to yourself. If you can be in Orlando on September 14th, you've got to take a look at the amazing deal that they're making available. You can take it online on demand starting 5 minutes from now. Okay. That is our most popular option. All right. You can do it at your pace. You can knock it out in a day. You can take up to a year. I wouldn't encourage you to, but this one you can do from the comfort of your home at your pace at 3 o'clock in the morning if you wanted to. And then the perfect combination of both is when I teach it live via Zoom. And I spread these out over 2 days so that you have some time to absorb the information. The very next class I have coming up is September 16th and 17th. All right, 16th and 17th. So there's 3 different options there for you. What does it cost to the class? $4.99. That includes the course and your first year's membership. After that, it's only $99 per year. For putting up with me for the past hour, Jeanette will share on the chat area where you could sign up for the online on demand and save $100. Okay, so what's wrong with that, right? Save $100, $3.99. You get the entire course, you get the 1 year, and then I'm going to do a 2-for-1 to reward you even further. If you sign up for the online on demand now at no charge, you can also attend the September live virtual class. So this gives you an opportunity to, because when you do it online on demand, you can't ask questions, and oftentimes you don't even know what to ask. Same thing when you do it live. When you do it live, you don't get the recording. You don't even know what to ask. But see, this way, take it online on demand, and then you take a second hit, a second dose on the Zoom, and now you can ask questions, and you do get the recordings of those 2 days. And I know money's tight. I tried financing it for people. That was a huge mistake. So now I've partnered with PayPal or Klarna so that you can go ahead and make payments through that. Klarna is an awesome option. When you go to the checkout area, you can say, tell me more about Klarna, and you can make payments doing that. Well, anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let me go ahead and take any questions that you may have. Okay. Let me see here. Okay, so we got the information there. Here. Does anyone have a question that they want to unmute themselves and ask while you have me available to answer them for you? Anyone, someone? Okay. All right. So, well, listen, I appreciate you being on this call. We will send out the recording of today's session a little bit later today, if not tomorrow. And you know what? Share it. Maybe there's people in your office or in your team that could have, would have, should have been here and they weren't able to. And you can go ahead and share that information with them. Anyway, thank you so much for your time and attention. We hope to see you soon in one of our classes. Take care. Bye-bye.